Revealed, 7 bone-chilling caving experiences that expose eerie secrets of the unexplained. The autumn sun was starting to dip behind the Appalachian Mountains, casting long shadows over the rustling leaves, when the Riley family set off for what they hoped would be an adventure of a lifetime. But as they descended deeper into the cave, the walls closed in, and every flicker of their flashlights danced with uncertainty. Echoing whispers wrapped around them, feeling like sinister secrets drifting from the darkness. That's when laughter faded, replaced by a weighty silence dense enough to cut through. Who wouldn't he be curious about the stories of lost miners, the restless spirits murmuring, begging to be remembered? Legend had it that their tormented souls lingered here, guarding ancient treasures hidden from the world above. As Casey, the adventurous teenager, led the way with her boundless enthusiasm, Ben and Lily closely followed, heartbeats quickening with each step deeper into the cold, wet earth. Mark and Sarah trailed behind, glancing warily at one another. They had signed up for a little family bonding, not to confront historical ghosts. Then, it happened. Just after rounding a corner, Casey's flashlight illuminated strange markings on the walls. Words etched with desperation glowed faintly, pleas for help or warnings of betrayal. The air grew thick, and a draft slipped through like fingers dragging over bare skin. "What if this is more than just a cave?" whispered Lily, her voice nearly drowned out by the echoes all around them. Just as their hearts raced with a mix of fear and excitement, the shadows began to twist, morphing into haunting visions. Figures of pale faces emerged, singing soft melancholic tunes that felt eerily familiar. Were they truly lost souls, or mere figments of their imaginations? They weren't just exploring the cave was exploring them, peeling back layers of their very identity, their family connections seemingly unraveling with every step taken. Before they could catch their breath, a chilling apparition appeared, a forlorn figure garbed in old mining gear. "Help!" it gasped, drawing forth memories from the family's own past, a legacy burdened with struggle and survival. Mark clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of his ancestors pressing down. They had always thought of themselves as resilient, self-sufficient, but this specter forced them to confront the idea that they weren't just descendants, but also inheritors of pain. Suddenly, as if summoned by their thoughts, Mr. Caldwell, the local historian, stumbled into view. He stood there, lantern swaying, eyes wide with a mix of excitement and dread. "You've unearthed truths better left buried," he declared, voice echoing ominously through the cavern. His words split through familial bonds as he unwrapped a tale of injustices tied to the land beneath their feet, challenging the Rileys' individualistic ideals. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The shadows piled on, flickering like dark memories brought to life, failures, grudges, choices that hadn't been made. As whispers grew into a cacophony of voices pleading for attention, the Rileys' unity began to splinter. Just when hope seemed lost, they felt an overwhelming urge to lean on one another, to hold tight against the haunting truths that demanded recognition. As they neared the cave's exit, darkness unfurled behind them. The air shifted, thickening like the tension in the room before a storm. A final wailing cry echoed through the tunnel, ripping at their hearts, leaving them at the crossroads of their legacy, bound to the past by chains of responsibility and fear. Standing on the precipice of that revelation, the path back twisted and blurred. They turned to run, but the cave pulsed with life, shifting, sending them down a corridor of uncertainty as the haunting questions loomed large. Would they confront the spirits, or would they become one with the lost souls that whispered through the stones? The air felt different now. It buzzed, a strange charge that sent shivers racing down everyone's spine. Mark glanced at Casey, her face etched with both excitement and fear. She tugged at a lock of hair, a nervous habit he recognized all too well. "What if it knows us?" she whispered, barely audible above the ominous thrumming of their surroundings. Just keep moving. Ben said, his voice breaking the spell of despair hanging thick in the cave. They had come too far to turn back now, even as the shadows twisted and coiled like serpents at their heels. As they rushed through the narrow passage, the markings on the walls pulsated in their flashlights, whispering secrets in a dialect of despair. The memories seemed to surge with every frantic step they took, dragging them down deeper into family traumas they thought were behind them. "Come on, this way," Sarah shouted, leading them toward a faint glowing light that flickered through the oppressive gloom. The light grew brighter, revealing the contours of a sprawling chamber that opened up around them. It was breathtaking. Stalactites hung like ancient chandeliers overhead, shimmering with mossy glimmers. But that beauty came with an unsettling weight. It felt as if the cavern was alive, breathing and watching. "Do you feel that?" Lily murmured. The air was charged with an electric tension, and their breaths hung suspended, mixing with the musty scent of the earth around them. She reached for her brother's hand, a silent plea for reassurance. Then they saw it, a massive mural sprawled across the far wall, depicting twisted faces twisted in agony, spectral miners from another time. Each figure bore an expression that felt far too real, as if their anguish was somehow imprinted into the stone. This must be what we were summoned for," Mr. Caldwell whispered, stepping closer, peering into the faces like a man possessed. "They're trying to tell us something." Suddenly, the chamber shook. Dust and small rocks rained down, causing panic to erupt in the group. "Get back!" Mark yelled, feeling a primal urge to protect his family. But in the chaos, Casey stepped forward, entranced, reaching toward the mural. "No! Don't!" Sarah cried out, but it was too late. The moment Casey's fingertips brushed the stone, the cave erupted in a cacophony of screams, the anguished wails of the trapped souls reverberating against the walls. The air thickened with sorrow, and the painted faces began to ripple, their eyes searching and desperate. "You have to understand." A voice boomed, reverberating through the cave, pulling at their very essence. "These souls, they yearn for acknowledgement. They don't want to be forgotten." Terror gripped Mark's heart as he watched Casey stagger back, her eyes wide, shimmering with unshed tears. The walls were closing in, the chamber pulsing as if the cave itself were reacting to their fears. "What do they want?" Ben shouted, panic lacing his words. A fierce wind whipped through the chamber, extinguishing their lights, plunging them into darkness. In that terrifying void, faces twisted in silent screams surrounded them. The Rileys could feel the darkness pressing down, each breath heavier, each heartbeat louder, a stark reminder of their own mortality. In that suffocating silence, the question hung suspended: what would they have to sacrifice to appease these tortured spirits? As they stood paralyzed, shadows flickered with malevolent intentions, forcing them deeper into the mystery and reminding them that they weren't simply in a cave, they were entangled in a legacy of pain that demanded action. But before they could gather their thoughts, a familiar figure appeared out of the darkness, a reflection of their past, a ghostly vision of their own making. "Help!" it echoed, as each of their eyes widened in realization. This was not just some distant tragedy, it was a mirror of their own struggles. And with that, the cave welcomed them into an even darker journey. As the multitude of echoes faded, the walls began to tremble once more. Would they embrace the truths that awaited them, or would the shadows reclaim them forever? The echoes of despair faded into chilling silence, leaving the group trembling in the aftermath. The air thickened with dread, and each heartbeat sounded like a war drum, echoing in the void. Mark's breath quickened as his gaze darted from one dark corner of the chamber to another, sensing unseen eyes watching them. What was that?" Casey's voice quivered, her earlier bravado crumbling like the cave's ancient structure around them. She looked toward the shadows where their past had manifested. Had they truly summoned these shadows, or had they been lurking all along, waiting for the right moment to strike? Ben grabbed Casey's arm, his grip tight enough to send a message of urgency. "We can't lose it now. Whatever that was, we need to push through." Even as he spoke, doubt etched his face like the crevices in the cave walls. "Wait," Sarah said, her heart racing as her instincts kicked in. "We need to find a way to communicate. If those souls don't want to be forgotten, what if we can help them?" Disappointment mingled with a spark of hope. Could they really bridge the chasm between this world and the anguished souls that lingered here? The chamber pulsed around them as if the cave was alive, responding to their thoughts. The mural flickered back into view. The faces, once merely painted on stone, shifted and seemed to draw closer. The anguish in their eyes began to mirror the emotions raging within the group. Mark took a tentative step towards the mural, drawn by the overwhelming need to understand. "We need to be careful," he warned, glancing back at his family, catching the fragile determination in their expressions. "If we're going to do this, we need to face our own ghosts first." Mark closed his eyes and drew a deep breath, feeling the ground solid beneath his feet. He thought of their family's secrets, the burden they carried, regrets whispered from his childhood that had haunted him to adulthood. Tender memories twisted into sorrowful knots as he steeled himself to confront it all. "I'm here," he said softly, as if his words could reach beyond the cavern's damp stone. "We hear you. We see you." With that declaration, the cave shuddered, reverberating with a low growl. Sand and dust fell like rain. At that instant, the air thickened with electricity, alive with possibility. A pulse shimmered through the air, warming their skin and igniting a glimmer of something. Was it hope? Suddenly, the air erupted with sounds, whispers, cries, muffled pleas. Casey stepped closer to the mural, her voice gaining strength. "What do you want from us?" she called out. Her heart raced, fueled by a flicker of courage. "Tell us how we can help." As her words echoed, the chamber sealed tighter around them. Shadows began to retreat, coiling back as if contemplating their own existence. For a fleeting moment, the sorrowful faces softened, revealing hints of gratitude amidst the torment. But it was an illusion, fleeting and slippery. A bone-chilling wind swept through, snatching their breath and wrenching their senses from their grasp. The wall trembled, and the faces distorted into grinning masks of darker intentions. "Help is not free," the thunderous voice boomed again, shaking them to their very core. "Each story has a price. What will you sacrifice to uncover the truth?" A wave of panic surged. What price were they willing to pay? Would they dare to confront the ghosts of their past? Something dark and exhilarating took shape in the space between breaths, pushing them onward yet holding them back all at once. The chamber's pulse quickened, a chaotic dance of dread and anticipation. Mark exchanged desperate looks with Casey, Ben, and Sarah. Their fates were intertwined, as were the secrets of their family's past. As the shadows loomed closer, they had one choice to make: would they be brave enough to step into the light of their own ghosts, or would they be consumed by the darkness in this cavern of lost souls? And just as the ground rumbled, reverberating the weight of their decision, they heard a single, piercing scream, the last bit of a soul yearning for release. The path forward crumbled beneath them, leaving one destination unfathomably dark. The ground beneath their feet quaked violently as the shriek faded into a haunting echo, swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Mark felt a tightening in his chest. The air thickened, charged with something ancient and powerful. A wave of panic surged through the group, leaving them reeling. Darkness wrapped around Sarah as her courage faltered, and she stumbled backward. "Stay close," Ben shouted, forcing himself to sound composed, although the tremor in his voice betrayed him. With urgency, he pulled Casey back to his side, each of them glancing fearfully into the endless shadows that shifted around them. "Mark!" Sarah cried, her eyes wide with distress. "We have to move. This isn't safe anymore." But something deep within Mark's gut told him they couldn't just abandon the cries of the souls. The weight of their history hung in the air, almost tangible. He was struck by the thought that they had been running from these ghosts far too long. Didn't they owe it to the lost to find out what was happening here? To confront what lay ahead? No. Mark said forcefully, surprising even himself. We can't. We can't walk away. Not now. His words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Casey nodded, her eyes glistening with determination mixed with dread. What do we need to do? I think we need to tell our own stories first, Mark said, feeling the urgency in his bones. We face them, and maybe they will listen. Maybe we can help each other. As if summoned by Mark's declaration, the shadows seemed to pulse and twist around them, curious, hungry for the truth. The faces within the mural writhed, their painted mouths stretching as if ready to speak. A strange connection formed between Mark and the figures, as his heart beat loudly in his chest. Each story has a price, he murmured, feeling the words slither into his mind. But what if we're not just the storytellers? What if we could be the storytellers and the healing hands? But before anyone could respond, the ground gave way. A jagged fissure opened beneath them, plunging into an abyss. Mark grabbed Ben's hand, his grip like iron, as the others clutched desperately to each other. The wind howled around them, a terrifying voice of the cave warning them to silence their truths. Mark. Sarah's voice was frantic, slipping from his grasp for just a heartbeat. Panic surged through his veins. They were too close to losing hope. We need to think. I know. He snapped back, the adrenaline coursing through him. They all knew the stakes now, and they couldn't afford to lose momentum. Sarah, tell me something from your past, something you've buried. As Mark urged them to speak, the shadows seemed to retreat, the faces of the mural drawing just a little closer, hungry for their stories. Each flicker of light from the mural cast long, twisted beams upon their faces. Ben swallowed hard, his own eyes brimming with emotion. I lost my brother. I could never save him. I was too weak. The admission seemed to stir the shadows, a ripple of understanding threading through the air. One by one, they began to share pieces of their past's lost friendships, regrets, moments of betrayal, the shadows of love and loss. With every word, the cave trembled, longing for the forgotten and casting a web of connection. They felt the weight pressing against them, as if the cave itself was responding, eager for their confessions. As they spoke freely and openly, the chilling wind howled and raged around them, but within the encroaching darkness, they felt a flicker of light, a warmth rising from the shadows. Could it be hope? But just as the panic waned and the shadows began to soften, that thunderous voice echoed again, now laced with an even more sinister tone. You think your words will free you? Remember, every story has its price. The chamber lurched, and without warning, the ground split further, threatening to devour them whole. Mark felt his heart in his throat. Quick! We have to. But before he could finish, they were swallowed by darkness, an unseen force pulling them deeper, further into the unknown. Would they escape with their secrets, or would the cavern claim their stories as its own? And then, in the silence that followed, the whispers began again, mingling with the darkness around them. What will you sacrifice? Whispered the void and held its breath, waiting for their answer. The darkness wrapped around them like a wet blanket, thick and suffocating. Mark's breath came in short, ragged gasps as he felt the ground shifting beneath him. An icy hand seemed to grip his heart, squeezing with cold, relentless pressure. They were falling, suspended in a void with no sense of direction, no sense of safety. Hold on to each other. Ben shouted through the howling wind, desperation clawing at the edges of his voice. Mark felt Sarah's hand slip into his, her palm sweaty and trembling. It was a connection, a lifeline in the abyss. What do we do? She cried, her voice tight with fear. There must be a way out, Mark replied, even as hope twisted like a blade in his chest. We have to face it, whatever it is. A light flickered in the distance, shimmering like a fragile flame. As the darkness shifted to reveal the glimmer, the ground solidified again beneath them, creating a shaky platform. They landed with a thud, disoriented but alive. Where are we? Casey asked, glancing around, her eyes wide with terror. I think Mark hesitated, his heart pounding. His gaze landed on the mural, now more vivid than before, the anxious faces etched on the rocky surface watching them, awaiting something. I think we're at the center of it all. In front of them, the mural's eyes twinkled with an eerie light. It seemed to breathe as if it were alive, twisting and writhing, drawing them closer. They're expecting us, he whispered, his foot inching forward. Expecting us to do what? Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper, filled with uncertainty. Maybe, they want our secrets, our pain, Mark said, remembering the voice echoing through the chamber. It's asking for sacrifice. The air crackled with tension. Each of them felt the weight of their pasts more heavily now than they ever had. One by one, they opened up, but now it seemed all too real. Mark stared at the mural again. We didn't just come here to get lost, we came to confront this, to confront ourselves. Another shadow loomed over them, an entity rising from the remnants of the fractured ground. It was formless, but its presence was suffocating. Cold dread settled in their bones. The wind howled again, carrying the whispers. What will you sacrifice? Your worst experience, Mark breathed. That's what they want. They want to know the weight we've carried. Are you sure? Casey's voice trembled, fear mingling with the glimmer of understanding. We have to. Mark swallowed hard. Together. One by one, they began to speak into the pulsating darkness, their confessions spilling into the air. Each secret was heavy, a burden lifted but not without a cost, pulling them deeper into the shadows. I always felt alone, even in a crowd. My father never saw me, Casey confessed, her voice shaking. The mural shimmered in response, absorbing her words like a sponge. I'll go next, Sarah piped up, biting her lip to suppress the tears. I couldn't save my mother. I was too scared too late. As her confession hung in the air, the shadows writhed and coiled, pulling closer. Ben stepped forward, eyes burning with raw pain. I was the one who hurt them. It was my fault. His truth unleashed a low, guttural moan from the abyss, echoing their fears back at them. Suddenly, the shadows retreated as if recoiling from an unseen force. In the brief silence, the mural pulsed, its energy shifting. Was this the healing Mark had hoped for? Or was it just the calm before a more catastrophic storm? The ground trembled again, more violently this time. Mark gripped Sarah's hand tighter. Hang on. But it was too late. The voices grew louder, more demanding. What more will you give? What will it take to free you? Then, the cavern shuddered, splitting again, threatening to consume them whole. Mark's heart raced. Would their sacrifices be enough, or would the shadows find a way to snatch them back into darkness? The ground beneath them crumbled, each confession echoing around them like a warning. Mark's chest tightened, dread washing over him. Together. Ben yelled, but before they could react, the darkness erupted around them, dragging them deeper into its grasp, and with one last glimpse of the flickering mural, a chilling question echoed through Mark's mind: was the price too high? The murmur of the abyss awaited their answer, hungry for more, waiting for the next sacrifice. They slammed against a hard surface, the impact jarring their senses. Mark's vision blurred, then gradually adjusted to the eerie luminescence that flickered like a dying star in a cavernous expanse. The contours of the cave walls twisted and turned, almost mocking them, but the mural, a grotesque memory made real, stood bold and demanding. Where are we? Casey's eyes darted around, wild with confusion. I think we're in a different part of the cavern, Sarah stammered, her voice quivering. But how? We were just focus. Mark interrupted, his heart still racing. We need to figure this out. We can't let whatever that was take us. We have to keep moving. A gust of chilled air swirled around them as if an unseen presence was sweeping through, whispering secrets just beyond comprehension. Shadows darted within the crevices, retracting from the glow of the mural. It undulated, each brushstroke alive with their fears and sorrows. Look, Ben pointed at the mural as it illuminated an image of itself, not just art, but a moving portrayal of their confessions, shattering moments played back like a loop. Mark felt nausea rise. More than just witnessing their pain, they were reliving it. No, Mark whispered, backing away. But the mural pulled him closer, an unyielding force. Get away from there. Casey screamed, her face twisting in horror. But it was too late. The moment pulled Mark in, and he stood frozen as his deepest regrets flickered around him like flames licking at the walls of his sanity. His childhood witnessing his mother's despair, helpless and small. His heart clenched. No, please, not this. The ground beneath them shook violently, and shadows recoiled. Mark could feel them not just watching, but feeding heavy with hunger and anticipation. Sacrifice. A voice thundered, echoing through the hollow chamber. The shadows surged, drawing closer, leaning into their worst fears. Remember, Ben gritted his teeth, his brow damp with sweat as he grasped Mark's shoulder. We're in this together. We have to keep speaking, keep giving if we want to escape. Mark swallowed hard, their faces swimming in the darkness. They want everything, he said, heart pounding. But what if we have nothing left to give? Then we fight. Ben shouted, his resolve igniting hope within them. We'll face it if we're gonna survive this. All right. Mark yelled, channeling his fear into anger. I'll go. I'll show you what I've carried for too long. He stepped forward, every step feeling like a leap into an abyss. I was too weak to protect my family. I let my demons control me, and it cost me everything. The mural reacted instantly, pulsating with intensity as if drinking in his confession. Mark felt a rush of energy, pain receding, replaced with a warmth spreading through him. Casey joined in, her voice breaking but strong. I ignored my friends. I let them drift away because I was too scared to reach out. I hated myself for it. Ben stepped closer, voice fierce. I never stood up for what was right. I allowed injustice to thrive, and I was part of the blame. I'm ready to change that. The echoes of their confessions ricocheted through the cave, fueling the mural's life with their honesty. Yet, as the shadows retreated again, a darker undertone crawled back, yet unanswered questions. What do they want now? Sarah breathed, stepping back and pulling them into a small huddle. What's the cost of this freedom? Silence stretched between them, the air thick with anticipation. They could feel the walls closing in, the ground shifting once more, a tremor at their feet. Listen, Mark said, heart racing again. The mural probably knows. We need to. A screech pierced the cave. The ground split open, crackling like a gigantic breath releasing, and darkness poured out, greedy and vast. Then, the shadows whispered, a cacophony of voices merging into one. What else will you forsake? What will you lose to be truly free? Mark bore witness to the chaos swirling around them, his heart pounding like a war drum. They were faced with a choice they had not prepared for. Will they uncover the final sacrifice required, or will they be lost to the shadows forever? The cavern awaited their answer, hungry for the ultimate confession. The ground quaked beneath them, a gaping maw of darkness threatening to swallow them whole. Mark's breath quickened as fear coiled tightly around his chest. What do we do? He gasped, panic rising in his throat. Stay together. Ben shouted, eyes wide, grasping Casey's hand tightly. They formed a circle, drawing strength from their connection. The shadows quivered, as if sensing their resolve, momentarily holding back. Maybe we have to give more, Sarah suggested, her voice trembling. We can't let this thing take us. We need to take control. What else can we confess? Casey's voice was a whisper, but determination sparked in her eyes. What more can they want from us? We're already raw. Mark felt the heat of their confessions, the weight of their shared regrets, and a flicker of defiance ignited inside him. What if we stopped giving and started taking? What if we took back what was ours? Are you crazy? Ben shot back, but the doubt in his voice was undercut by curiosity. Think about it, Mark persisted. Every time we've given a piece of ourselves, it only made them stronger. What if we challenge it? What if we invoke our worth? As if summoned by his words, the walls echoed a sinister laugh, feeding off their mounting anxiety. Bravery in the face of despair, the shadows teased. But at what cost, little souls? Enough! Mark screamed, rallying his friends. We are not here to be consumed. We are here to reclaim who we are. The shadows roared in response, a chilling howl that rattled their bones. The ground shifted violently, rocks crumbled and fell, the air thick with dust and dread. But amidst the chaos, something began to change. The friends stepped forward, hearts pounding with a fierce camaraderie. Let us show them what we're made of. Ben roared, stepping ahead, arms raised defiantly. I will not let my past shape my future. I've accepted the mistakes I made, but I refuse to let regret define me. Mark nodded, feeling a surge of courage fill the room. Together. Our voices are stronger than fear. Casey was next, her voice rising. I've lost too much time worrying about what others think. I am worth it. I stand with you. The confessions morphed, no longer languishing in sorrow, but rising in strength. Each word cast like stones against the dark, and then Sarah, her voice shaking but fierce, stepped forward. Listen. This is who we are. We carry our burdens, but we fight back. You cannot control us any longer. With each declaration, the shadows recoiled, their darkness dimming in the face of their light. The mural shuddered, its grotesque imagery retreating, revealing fiery symbols of unity and strength, illuminating brighter than before. Push them back. Mark yelled, exhilaration igniting within him. We won't let you take us. The darkness groaned, a deep, rumbling sound, and the shadows withdrew as though repelled by their courage. But even as they stepped forward, a chilling sensation crept over them. The darkness seemed to twinkle, alive with malevolence, as the ground once more trembled beneath their feet. Your strength fascinates us, the shadows whispered, taunting them. But this is only the beginning. What will you do when faced with the final choice? Mark's blood ran cold. What do you mean? The ground trembled more violently, and from its depths rose harrowing faces, each etched with grief and despair, echoing their fears. Sacrifice lives to gain freedom, the chorus of shadows chorused, intertwined voices thundering in the cave. What do you want? Casey shrieked, her expression a mix of dread and defiance. Amongst you lies the soul of betrayal, the shadows hissed, flickering like smoke. Who will be the traitor for the salvation of the rest? The cavern echoed with their oppressive silence, leaving a question hanging in the air. Who among them would turn? And at what cost? The shadows loomed, hungry for the answer. Could they escape the clutches of darkness without losing one of their own? Mark felt his heart pound in his chest as the shadows closed in, their whispers creeping like ice down his spine. We can't let this tear us apart, he gasped, striving to keep his friends close. Dread clung to the air like a thick fog, and the faces rising from the ground were haunting mirrors of their own fears and failures. What if it's true? Sarah whispered, her eyes darting to the shifting darkness. What if one of us must betray the others? What if it's me? No. Ben snapped, shaking his head as if to banish the thought. We can't let these things play with our minds. They're trying to sow discord. Mark straightened, steeling his determination against the tightening noose of despair. We have to stand united. Whatever they want, they won't get it. The shadows laughed again, a cruel sound that mingled with the clattering stones. Unity? How quaint. They jeered. When your lives hang in the balance, true nature is revealed. Will someone rise to save the others? Or will you all fall forever? The monstrous faces twisted into grimaces of despair, taunting them. Mark felt his throat tighten as he searched each of his friends' eyes for strength. "This isn't just about us," he pleaded. "We can fight together. We can find a way out of here." But their whispers grew louder, each shadow voice layering over another. "Who amongst you carries the weight of betrayal? Who will be your scapegoat?" Mark's stomach turned. "This isn't real. We're not going to betray each other." But inside, a deeper fear flickered. What if? His mind raced back to moments of doubt, moments when each of them had faltered, moments they knew they had let each other down. What if their fears left them vulnerable to something far more malevolent? The shadows sensed it, feeding on the emotions that rippled through the group. "Tell us what you're hiding," they demanded. "Your past sins, your regrets, your failures." Suddenly the ground shifted violently, sending tremors of fear through them. Cracks split open beneath their feet, revealing an abyss where shadows danced like flames. "Will you condemn one to save many? Or will you all pay the price?" Ben's expression hardened, his resolve solidifying in the face of terror. "It's not just about survival," he shouted. "It's about staying who we are. We won't let anyone go together or not at all. I stand with all of you." Casey cried, tears welling in her eyes. "I couldn't betray my friends. I refuse." But the shadows howled louder, their dark forms swelling, feeding off their fear and uncertainty. Each steadfast refusal only makes the choice heavier. "Embrace the truth hidden in your hearts." Mark staggered back, overwhelmed by the menacing chorus that surrounded them. He could feel the emotional tug-of-war within their midst, the silent accusations, the guilt gnawing at them. "We need to confront it. We can't let fear decide our fate." As if responding, the shadows rippled in response to his command, dark tendrils lashing out, trying to ensnare them. Mark turned to his friends, their faces tinged with despair, but somehow, there was a flicker of hope. "Together, we can reject their lies," he declared. "Let us shout our truth, every painful secret, every moment we've ever been scared. But together." And just as their voices began to rise, the shadows' grip tightened. A sudden crack echoed, and the cavern trembled violently as the ground began to give way, opening to a hellish chasm below. "Make your choice now." The shadows roared, the voices echoing in unison, hungry and furious. With a surge of adrenaline, Mark felt an unsettling realization creep in. Was it already too late? As the abyss beckoned, the importance of their next words hung heavily in the air. Who among them could stand to face betrayal? And in their darkest hour, would they embrace the shadows or would they trust their bond to repel the impending doom? As the ground rumbled, each friend's fate was suddenly uncertain. Would they stand or fall? And then, amidst the chaos, a chilling voice whispered just above the din, "Someone must make the sacrifice. What would they choose?" Mark felt the earth tremble beneath them, fragments of stone breaking away as the chasm yawned open. The pitch-black void below seemed alive, pulsating with the promise of despair. Fear clutched his throat, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat. He cast a desperate glance at his friends, the shadows warping their features, turning their faces into masks of doubt. "Mark, what do we do?" Sarah's voice was tiny, a thread of hope wavering in the wind. "Stick together. We can't let them separate us." Mark shouted, urgency propelling his words. "We face this as one." But every second felt like an eternity as the shadows slithered closer, their eerie whispers weaving through the air. What does togetherness matter when betrayal lurks in the heart? Choose now, or suffer the consequences. The group huddled together, but the shadows' taunts dug deeper. Cold fingers of fear crept in, planting seeds of suspicion. Mark could see it in Casey's eyes. Her fierce determination was cracking. What if someone has to volunteer? Someone has to go? No. Ben barked, shaking his head adamantly. No one is going anywhere. We fight this. Together. But doubt simmered in the air, thick and suffocating. The shadows curled tighter, sensing weakness. Mark could feel the weight of their pasts pressing against him. All those moments, he thought, the mistakes, the secrets we kept, the very things that could tear us apart. Tell us your truths, the shadows breathed, voices dripping with malice. Which one of you is willing to step into the void? Who carries enough guilt to free the rest? Mark's heart raced. Of course, they all had something hidden beneath layers of friendship and laughter. Everyone had regrets, the lies told to spare feelings, the times they turned away when they could have stepped in. But to voice that? It felt like betrayal itself. Let us expose their game. Mark declared, voice trembling but resolute. We have to reveal our truths. The only way to silence the shadows is to shine a light on them. He could see the fire flicker back in Ben and Casey's eyes, but Sarah seemed frozen, a fear-induced scar running through her features. What if I've really been the weak link? What if it is me who has to pay? Stop! Ben shouted, no one is weak here. We all have our moments. We've shared everything, haven't we? What if the shadows want us to instigate this? What if that's their goal, to create discord? Mark said, yelling over the cacophony of shadows. The darkness shrieked with laughter, a cacophony of hundreds of voices mocking him, clawing at their collective sanity. Keep discussing your cowardice, children. The longer you talk, the deeper you sink. Will you condemn one for the many? Mark felt the ground quaking increasingly, the edge under their feet eroding. Focus. Each of us must confront our fears for the strength of the whole. We owe it to each other. It hit the group hard, the realization that time was rapidly running out. Suddenly, a flash of insight lit up within Mark, a vision of what they truly feared. What if the darkness can't hurt us if we're truly honest with ourselves? Then let us do it, Ben said, his voice cutting through the chaotic noises. Together, we reveal our truths. Who's first? Casey asked, trembling but determined. As they exchanged anxious glances, anticipation clawed at their insides. One by one, they would share their secrets, their fears, their regrets, if only to break the stranglehold of the shadows. But just as they began to speak, the shadows recoiled, screeching in fury. No! You will fall into the darkness before you ever dare to expose the light of your intentions. Mark felt a surge of adrenaline shoot through him, but as he prepared to voice his deepest secrets, the cavern shook violently again, and he could feel the final walls closing in. He glanced at his friends in desperation, realizing that their honesty might not be enough to save them from what lurked beyond the shadows, because what they each held back was far darker than any of them had imagined. Mark! We need to choose now. Sarah shouted, eyes wide with panic. And then, still overshadowed by their fate, the haunting, chilling voice rose once again, dripping with malevolence, choose your sacrifice or all will be consumed. Would they find the courage to face their truths together? Or would the shadows win, one sacrifice at a time? The cavern trembled, a fierce growl resonating off the walls, as the shadows writhed more vigorously than ever. Mark felt the rumble beneath him, each tremor echoing the intensified pressure they faced. This is it! He shouted, determination etched deep in his voice. We can't let fear take us. We were built on trust, on family, we just have to remember that. Around him, he could see glimmers of agreement, but doubt still lingered in their eyes. What do we say? Casey asked, her voice wavering, clinging to Ben's arm. What we've buried. Mark exclaimed, stepping closer to the darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. Everything we've kept hidden. We say it out loud together. The shadows hissed in response, teeth bared, swirling around as if swirling in hunger. You think words will save you? They snarled, a mocking laughter reverberating through the cave. Their souls have long forgotten the taste of freedom. Sarah took a breath, glancing at each of them. No. They haven't forgotten. We just haven't acknowledged them. She stepped forward, her gaze fierce. I'll start. I never believed enough in myself. I always thought I would be a failure, and that belief has held me back. The shadows thrashed violently, but in that confession, a soft glow began to expand around Sarah, pushing back the darkness for a moment. It felt like liberation, a lock clicking open. Go on. Mark encouraged, feeling the fear that had gripped his heart start to loosen. I never stood for what was right, Ben whispered next, his voice raw but fervent. I let friends down, and I was too scared to speak when it mattered. I let down the people I cared about. Again, the shadows recoiled, shadows curling inward as the light grew. It wasn't much, but it felt like strength building in their fragile bonds. This isn't just me. Casey shouted, her voice vibrating with determination. I've pushed away the ones I love because I was afraid of losing them. I can't let fear shield my heart anymore. With that, a brighter light cascaded from her, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. Mark felt the energy burgeon as he realized that each shared pain was stitching them together. We are stronger together, he said, voice rising above the chaos. Let us be honest. I've spent too long wallowing in doubts about my worth. I let my past define me. As he spoke, a radiant warmth surged through him, illuminating every corner of the cavern and forcing the shadows to retreat. Each truth propelled them further away from being consumed, but then the laughter came back deeper and more sinister. Sacrifices must be made. It is the price of redemption. A voice roared, tearing through the cavern, shaking stalactites loose from above. The ground quaked, but Mark felt the tether of unity knitting closer between them. No. We refuse to believe that. But the shadows pressed, dark shapes looming over them, foreboding. What will you give? They snarled. The void grows hungry for betrayal. In that moment, Casey's face blanched. What if one of us has to perish? She whispered, each word hanging heavy with dread, echoing in the empty space like a verdict. No. Mark shouted, anger boiling to the surface. We are not playing their game. No one sacrifices anyone. But the fear had taken root among them, churning the air thick with panic. Uneasy glances flew between friends as anxiety escalated. This can't be how it ends. Ben cried, stepping closer, breathing hard. We've survived this far. We fight for each other. Suddenly, a blinding flash illuminated the chamber, a torrent of light ripping through the shadows. Mark felt an intense pull towards the mural as it shimmered to life with stories held captive. It projected images of each of their inner struggles, the past laid bare. Mark gasped, feeling the raw truth wash over him, seeping through his worries. No more hiding. We face our regrets and fears, and warriors we must be. In that collective moment of strength, the group pushed back against the shadows, forcing them to alter their form. The cavern churned, chaotic energy cracking through the air, releasing pent-up truths with a reverberating roar. The paintings twisted, swirling with renewed life beneath their confessions. Suddenly, amid the tumult, Mark grasped Sarah's hand tightly, looking fervently into her eyes. We choose to live. Together, we confront the darkness. Tears welled, but so did resilience. We name our fears and rise above them. As if summoned by their courage, the shadows writhed, recoiling slightly. Now you think yourselves warriors? They screeched, furious and desperate. Face reality. Whatever you are, we are stronger. Casey chimed in, raising her chin defiantly. Together, we can take back our past without sacrificing any of us. The cave grew still, a heavy silence enveloping them, tension crackling in the air. Through their unity, strength swelled, igniting flames of hope, as shadows seemed to flicker around them, drawn inexorably to the light emanating from within. What will you sacrifice? They thundered, but the group stood firm, emboldened by each other's resilience. "I'll sacrifice my doubts. I'll reclaim my worth," Mark shouted, heart pounding with adrenaline. "I take back my freedom." As he echoed his beliefs, a blinding wave of light shot forth, radiating from their joined hands and sweeping through the cavern, intertwining forcefully with the shadows until never before had such clarity surged forward, banishing despair. Gasping for breath, the friends felt the darkness dissipate, broken by closure and hope intertwining in a powerful embrace. In that sacred moment, they understood they had won not simply by forsaking something, but by redeeming their entire existence through unity, acknowledging the shadows while welcoming the light. And as the remnants of darkness evaporated, clarity swept through the space. The night air was sharp, alive. The cave held no secrets, only possibilities, a testimony to their renewed connection. Mark turned to his family, relief flooding through him like sunlight. "Together, our stories are strong enough. We do this as one." With that, they stepped towards the unseen exit, knowing the darkest part of their journey had faded behind while guiding them to a brighter future, rich with promise. Outside, the moon hung large, a beacon overhead welcoming them back to the world above. They had faced the dark and had emerged united. "No more shadows," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling, yet rooted in possibility. As they walked into the crisp night, each felt lighter, a weight lifted. They were no longer simply haunted by their pasts but had transformed them into something powerful. They smiled at each other, knowing they had all contributed to their own salvation. Together forever, Casey beamed, and as they departed the cave, the magic of their bond surged brightly ahead, for they had unlocked the truth of their legacy. The past each shadow woven into their lives had become not a burden, but a rock-solid foundation that propelled them forward. This is where their true journey began, and now, before you leave, it's time to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss future exclusive stories. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm. Flood that comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let us hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.